four final movies from 2020 on Hulu that we have not talked about yet on the channel. We're going to talk now about Run, Bad Hair, Books of Blood, and I Am Greta. Hey everybody, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my channel. We're going to talk now about four Hulu movies from 2020. I've actually reviewed all of their scripted films thus far in 2020 except these final three. And to round out the foursome, I chose one of their documentaries from 2020 that I thought seemed interesting, and that is I Am Greta. So we're going to talk about all of that here, and no spoilers. If you're new to the channel, I don't do spoilers for any of my new TV or movie reviews, so know that going in. I'll keep you safe there, and we'll just talk a little bit about these movies, and I'll give them grades. So let's start with Run. This movie is getting high praise from Rotten Tomatoes, 90%. And I was very intrigued by this from the start because, first of all, Sarah Paulson is one of the stars. Love her. And the director, which I didn't actually realize until after the movie, Anish Chaganty, who directed Searching, which is a fantastic movie from 2018. Highly, highly, highly recommended, in my top 5 of that year. So this one, okay, maybe not quite up to that level, but Chaganty is really, I think, making a name for himself for some inventive filmmaking. So basically this movie is about this gal played by Kiera Allen, who I am not actually real familiar with. Let me see if I know anything she's done. Nope, doesn't seem to be. But anyway, Sarah Paulson, of course, I know, and you probably know from many, many things. A lot of Ryan Murphy efforts. I want to say I first maybe took notice of her, because I don't watch American Horror Story, but I first maybe took notice of her in the whole, like, O.J. Simpson trial thing. Yeah, this Kiera Allen is a newcomer. She plays Chloe, and essentially she is a teenage daughter, wheelchair-bound. However, maybe she does not need to be wheelchair-bound. Maybe there's a bunch of stuff going on, and is it in her head? Is it really happening? Well, watch the movie and we'll find out. But Sarah Paulson plays the mom, and her name is Diane. And so Chloe and Diane have this very, very, private life, because it's basically just them and the doctors, more or less. And as we learn more and more about what might be going on with this situation, and if, this girl is in trouble, we get, more and more into the thriller aspect of this film. And what is great about this movie, among other things, is that it's a very, very tight 89 minutes. It gets in right away to the action, and the mystery element of it, and even a little bit of the thriller element. And then as it sort of progresses, I mean, there's just not a minute wasted. I felt Searching was the same way, just not a minute wasted here. You're always sort of like, okay, what's going to happen next? What is she going to do? What is Diane, the mom, going to do? A lot of things here. But overall, this is mostly a two-person show. I mean, there's a small group of other people in the cast. In fact, one of my least favorite parts of the movie is the pharmacist that they talk to is named Kathy Bates, which, look, come on. I know if you're an American Horror Story fan, Sarah Paulson, of course, worked with Kathy Bates, and all of that stuff. But, like, this is not a Ryan Murphy production. We don't need to be tongue-in-cheek about people. You don't have to have a character named Kathy Bates. So that's definitely one of my negatives. But I don't have many more. I mean, these are two powerhouse performances from these women. The only other thing I can really say in the negative about this movie is that maybe it's not completely original in its basic plot. That someone who is wheelchair-bound may be forced to be that way. All right, that's not new ground, so to speak. But what they do with it, I think, is really riveting. And I wouldn't be surprised because this is so highly rated on Rotten. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe we see some sort of nominations coming out of this movie from award season in the acting department specifically, if nothing else. I think Sarah Paulson has really gotten a lot of great accolades for her TV work lately, especially doing Nurse Ratched, and anything Ryan Murphy does that she's a part of usually is a success. But we don't see her too much in cinema, and so it was great to see her in this role. And this is, I think, the only movie that we're talking about today that was specifically designated for theaters before COVID hit, and then Hulu bought it. So this was going to be I think a summer release even. Which I think it might have done very, very well with that great word of mouth, but it was not meant to be, so we can watch it for free on Hulu, for better or worse. I think this is not necessarily hampered by the small screen, but might have been fun to watch, in a crowded theater of people, gasping at different times and whatnot. I leave Run with an A minus. Let's talk next about Bad Hair. This came out right around Halloween time, and it is a satirical comedy horror film, and it's written and directed by Justin Simeon, whose name I recognize. Let's see why I know who this person is. Okay, he directed and wrote and produced Dear White People, the movie, and I guess also the TV show. Oh my gosh, and he is creating the new Lando series for Disney Plus. All right, so he's going to be a big name here pretty soon. But how does Bad Hair show up? Well, this takes place in 1989, and it stars Elle Lorraine, who I'm unfamiliar with. She is a newcomer, as this gal Anna, who is an assistant at a BET-like station called Culture. Basically, it's black music mostly, but there's also some like talk shows and stuff as well, some culture type shows. And we have Vanessa Williams here as the boss Zora, and Jay Farrow as one of the head, I don't know if they're called VJs in the movie, but whatever. One of the head hosts on Culture, named Julius, and then we see Lena Waithe as well as one of the other hosts, named Brooke Lynn. And so Anna, trying to kind of make her way into this network, make a name for herself, become hopefully some sort of executive, but she's kind of a nerd, and she just doesn't really get the whole vibe that Culture's going for. So one of her suggestions is to get a weave, look the part a little bit more. So she does. She goes to the great Laverne Cox as Virgie to get a weave, and the weave is alive. So her luck starts turning around because of the weave, and things start happening in a horror comedy type direction from that. The first thing that stuck out to me about this movie is that if you know this type of culture in the late 80s, then this is a great satire. And I don't even look. I'm not black, but I loved R&B music in the 80s for sure, and we have a lot of recent, let's say, not current maybe, R&B greats in this movie playing different roles. Kelly Rowland, Destiny's Child, Usher, and MC Lyte among them. But Kelly Rowland plays this Sandra, who is like the hottest name in music. And they parody the Janet Jackson Miss You Much video like almost to the T. The satire of late 80s R&B music is fantastic here, if not also the culture too, which is ironic that the network is called Culture, because they really do kind of capture that time period. So that part is fantastic. Everything else is a bit of a mixed bag. I think they're trying to politicize a bit. They're trying to do some social commentary a bit, not unlike some of the other Simeon projects like Dear White People. It's certainly more on point there than it is here. I think it's a bit forced here. And it doesn't actually go off as a horror comedy until about halfway through. The first hour, there's almost no horror, and the comedy is more tongue-in-cheek satire. And then the horror starts, and it's not really comedic horror at all. But then, like, last 45 minutes or so, then it slides very nicely into the over the top horror comedy tropes that we love. The B movie, deaths and all that. It just seems to not mesh necessarily with the first hour of the movie. I liked both as separate entities. I'm not sure how well they came together, but I certainly don't regret watching this movie. I don't know how I feel about Jay Farrow as an actor. He's a great impressionist. We see that on SNL all the time, but as an actor, I don't know. I'm kind of torn on him. I don't think he really can stand up with some of these other people. I mean, Lena Waithe, I think she's going to be a big name, sooner or later, if not already. But I mean, I don't watch Westworld, so I know her from like some other things. I know her from like Ready Player One and whatever. But anyway, she is, I think, a talent, and she's great here. But this lead actress also very good, just like the gal in Run. I mean, somebody I don't know from anybody, but Elle Lorraine is doing a great job here as well. And she really, I think, if everybody in the cast gets the whole kind of camp factor they're going for. I mean, Vanessa Williams gets it too, but Vanessa Williams always is a little bit campy, I think, since Ugly Betty. And she's sort of doing like an Ugly Betty riff here as well. So I will also throw in there, James Van Der Beek has a small role here as, the white doofus who's trying to run the network. Hilarious, of course. But yeah, I don't know. I think the two ends of the movie are a little bit at odds with each other. I didn't actually realize it was a comedy horror until later on. It just seemed more like satire on the culture, and then all of a sudden the horror stuff came and it wasn't very satirical or comedic for the first part. So I think it's a little bit at odds with itself, but I did enjoy this movie, so I give Bad Hair a B. Up next is Books of Blood, and another one that came out right around Halloween, and actually, boy, talk about a movie at odds with itself. So this is based sort of loosely on these Clive Barker books called Books of Blood. I don't know if it's one book or just I don't know if it's one book that's an anthology or a series of books. I really don't know. But Clive Barker, of course, from many, many horror things. I didn't actually know he was a writer. I knew more of, I thought he was a director, but it turns out, no, he's like the writer of Hellraiser, and then they turned it into a movie. That's why it's called Clive Barker's Hellraiser. Okay, fine. So he is an author. I don't read horror. I really don't. So other than Stephen King, I'm kind of at a loss there. But anyway, so this takes two of the stories from Books of Blood and turns them into this anthology movie, and then adds a much longer third story. It's actually chronologically in the movie the first story, but the first story about Jenna, played by good old Britt Robertson from Tomorrowland. Her story goes like 50 minutes, and then we have Miles and Bennett. Those are stories 2 and 3, and those are loosely based on the book stories. So the Jenna one, I guess, is brand new, from what I understand. This movie really doesn't know how to connect any of the stories. It doesn't really, some of the stories just don't matter. Like the Jenna story, because it's so long, I remembered. Basically, she's a college student. She's got some mental issues, and so she decides to run away because of her medication, and then she thinks somebody's following her, and so she ends up at this bed and breakfast, and then a lot of crazy stuff starts happening there. That's like basically her story. I actually had to look up before I did this review what the second part was even about. I remember there was some male nudity in it, which is like this movie's calling card almost. Not male nudity specifically, but it's just like gratuitous, out of place, shock things like male nudity. It's just like, okay, I would love a story to go with this, Like there was no reason he needed to be naked in the scene other than the shock value, But basically it's like a psychic type of story. His name's Simon, and he is supposedly psychic, and so they him and his partner here try to scam these people and whatever, and stuff happens. All right, so then Bennett is the third story, and he's kind of no, he knows about the actual Book of Blood, and so I don't know if that's. I guess that's part of the actual Clive Barker Books of Blood too. I don't really know, but the third story has to do with that. He's like a bookseller. He owns a bookstore, and um, you know, the book itself has these powers and whatever. This movie is just all over the place. At least look, bad hair. Maybe the social commentary didn't work for me quite as much as they were hoping, but at least it had a stance. At least it was trying to make a point. This movie is pointless. None of the stories blended together. I will admit that some of them had some scary moments, but a lot of it was more just like shock, shock, shock. And then we'll see if if any of it happens to blend together with each other. Great. If not, who cares? Maybe they'll be frightened. Kind of idea. And to have that first story be like 50 minutes long told me that, okay, instead of giving Jenna her own standalone movie, uh, they realized, well, we can't flesh this out enough to make it interesting. So let's just have it be 50 minutes. But then they all can't be 50 minutes because then that's way too long. So I guess we'll just cut our losses and make the other ones like half as long. Like the Miles one is maybe a half hour, and then the Bennett one's like 20 minutes. So it's like diminishing results time wise also leads to who cares sort of nature, especially when by the end they all didn't, you know, collect onto themselves. So this for me was definitely a disappointing horror movie, especially when you hear Clive Barker, you think, okay, well, this will be something interesting. It really was not. It wasn't awful. Like I said, it did have a few scares in it, but there just was nothing holding it together. The acting also, I will say, is okay. Anna Friel plays the woman psychic, and Rafi Gavron is fine as Simon. Britt Robertson, honestly, I give her some crap because Tomorrowland is sort of a joke movie, but I actually like her in a lot of things that I see her in. I feel like Hollywood does try to make her happen a little too often, but I think she's fine in this. It just, especially after seeing Run and Bad Hair, like Run, great thriller, Bad Hair, satirical horror. This is like a mismatch of different things that doesn't know what it is. So I'm going to leave Books of Blood with a C minus, and I think that actually might be generous, but I'll give it the benefit of the doubt, I guess, because maybe if you're a fan of the books, it was better. I don't know. All right, so let's move on here. The final movie, I chose a documentary. I'm actually going to do a series of documentary videos coming up from 2020 because there's a whole bunch on the highest rated movies of the year on Rotten Tomatoes. Many of them I have not seen yet, so I'm going to try to tackle a bunch of those. This one's not on the top 100, though. It does have a positive review on Rotten. I think it's like a 72% or something. And it is I Am Greta. So this is about, of course, the Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg, who tells us early on in one of her speeches that her name is Greta Thunberg. But, we're lazy Americans, so it's Greta Thunberg to us. But anyway, if you know about her, I don't know if this movie will give you any additional guidance, maybe a little bit on her background and stuff. But look, I chose this because I do think climate change is a very, very important topic. For the most part, I like Greta as a person. She seems like a sweet girl. She's obviously intelligent. And, look, she wants to fight to make a better tomorrow for people, and that's great. But a couple of things about this movie that struck me as a little bit off-putting. Right away, one of the first things that she talks about, and if you don't know, Greta is autistic. She's got Asperger's. And so one of the things we learn early on in the movie is she makes some statement, and I think it's just to us as like the narration. I don't think it's part of like an interview she did or anything, but I think it's for just the viewers of this movie. But she says something to the effect of, people don't seem to care about climate change, and I think if you're not autistic, you can't understand, what the dangers of climate change are. Something about, if you're not autistic, you don't get it. And that was very off-putting to me because I'm like, look, I really, really believe in climate change, and I think it's horrible, and I think it needs, to be believed, and science needs to be real, and all of this to the politicians. Like, that just, and that was in the first few minutes of the movie. So right away, I'm like, all right, look, girl, like, that's fine that, it's great that you're leading this charge and you happen to be autistic, and maybe that is helping you, be more powerful about your message or whatever. But to say that if you're not autistic, you aren't going to get it, that's just, to me, I was like, okay, that's not cool. It was a little bit rude, I thought. But look, you can't deny Greta's accomplishments. I mean, she is the youngest person ever to be named Time Person of the Year. She's on all the like 100 most influential people lists or whatever. That Forbes puts out and Time Magazine puts out. So look, her impact, obviously, we know it. But the other problem I had with this movie is she says in the movie something about how she wants everybody to focus on the environment and her issues and her climate cause and not her personally. And that's fine. I am all for that. But the problem is, you're in a movie called I Am Greta, where we're actually learning about you and your background and your family, and we learn very little about actually your environmental causes. So those were like two issues that I had with it for sure. But look, I do think Greta is an adorable girl. I think she's obviously very, very smart. And it was great, to see some of her speeches and all of that. And really annoying to once again see Piers Morgan and Trump be like, oh, forget this girl. She didn't know what she's talking about, da 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 da. That, like, angers me all over again because, you jerk offs are going to be dead by the time the environment collapses anyway. So what do you care, I guess? But, like, this girl's actually trying to do something, Do I think this movie really explains her plight more than her life? I don't. And I think that is in direct sort of contradiction with her message. So I think in that respect, it's definitely uneven. So I'm going to leave I Am Greta with a B minus. I do think it's worth watching, especially if you are an environmentalist. But the problem is, it doesn't give you a whole ton of new information. Like, if you have been following Greta and you've been following her causes and stuff, you already know this stuff. And if you're a non-believer, then you're just going to be like, oh, F you, Greta, you dumb kid, whatever. So it's like, I'm not positive who this movie is for, other than, to kind of just reflect on this great girl and her accomplishments, which is what she doesn't want you to do. She wants you to focus on the environment. So it's at odds with itself for sure. But all right, so that's it. I'm trying to keep these 2020 reviews, now that we're in 2021, a little short and sweet. Try to keep these to under, 5-6 minutes per review. But we'll have a lot more coming up. Like I said, I'm going to try and get through all the 2020 movies I want to before mid-February-ish. I don't know when Oscar nominations are coming out this year. I really don't. I know the Oscars themselves have been pushed back to April, which we usually see that in February or March. So by this time of year, usually we already have all the Oscar nominees, all the Golden Globes nominees. This year we don't know, but I know there's a ton of movies still to get to, and I'm going to try and knock them down here, but we're done many of these services. I've done all the HBO Max movies. I've done all the Hulu movies now. So here we go. All right. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.